Miley Cyrus has officially released her 8th album, Endless Summer Vacation. Going into this album, I didn't know what to fully expect, because Flowers was the only lead up to the record, and Miley can be a bit of a wild card stylistically. She's known for being a chameleon. Her 2020 record, Plastic Hearts, landed as the best received record in her career at that point in time, with many people being receptive to Miley being presented as a pop rock star, and having various cosigns from rock and new wave icons such as Debbie Harry, Joan Jett, and Billy Idol. And with Miley developing a rougher tone due to vocal cord damage, the 80s rock pastiche of Plastic Hearts made her voice sound right at home. It was an album where Miley's quality of music and image aligned and blended well. Some would argue for the very first time in her career, Miley presented music and an evolution that felt completely comfortable. Many people thought that she might dabble in that sound a little bit more and grow with it. But also being that she is Miley Cyrus, a new stylistic adaptation is almost expected for every new album release at this point, given that she's done it so many times. I did previously talk about the immense success of Flowers and it becoming her biggest hit in a decade, and now one of the biggest hits of her career, with many people dissecting the lyrics and how it applies to her personal life. Also noting the similarities with Bruno Mars's If I Was Your Man. I had gone into it hoping that the single was just a safe introduction to the album and not indicative of the album as a whole. In fact, the song's inoffensive nature and subject matter placed it as a sequel to Miley's 2017 hit Malibu. Flowers is a pretty bare and straightforward disco track, perfectly listenable yet easily passable, sanitized to its own detriment. Unfortunately, Endless Summer Vacation has similar problems. The album is loosely divided into AM and PM sections, and the team behind the Harry Styles LP, Harry's House, produced majority of the record. Although Endless Summer Vacation has hints of quality pop, ultimately it's not packed with sticky hooks, super memorable songwriting, or compelling production. It makes the album feel 2 times longer than it actually is. In fact, it doesn't really even feel like an endless summer vacation. It doesn't have a burst of energy. Most of the songs are far more subdued and laid back than what would be expected from an album with this title. This feels like an album you would play after the after party, when you're cleaning up the mess you and your friends made from the night before and need some easygoing music that doesn't stimulate you too much or at all because you have a headache from the night before. When an album begins and ends with its biggest hit, it gives the indication that the big hit's the priority of the album, and everything else might just be a byproduct of it. The album kicks off decent enough after Flowers with the lush indie rock song Jaded, that has a really big sing-along chorus and Miley basically reflecting on a past relationship. There are parts on this album, like on Rose-Colored Lenses, where hints of psychedelic music and a neat usage of synths come into play, but it feels more like an afterthought and not a fully realized sonic identity. I also think the album is further dragged down by the nondescript and by-the-book ballads, such as You, 1,000 Miles with Brandi Carlile, and Wonder Woman, which kind of sounds like In the Arms of an Angel. These ballads definitely do not keep the spirit of summer fun in mind, and You in particular has a line that makes me cringe. I'm not made for no horsey and carriage. You know I'm savage, you're looking past it. Horsey? It's sung with such serious intent, but it's so hard to take seriously. I do think the second half of the album has some interesting moments, such as the hazy psychedelic production on Handstand, despite the awkward spoken word intro. River is also a highlight. It's a blend of techno, disco, and synth pop. It's a pretty straightforward sex jam and reminds me a lot of the work of Kylie Minogue. Violet Chemistry is the big return of Mike Will Made It taking on production duty for Miley. And while it might not be as instantly commanding as their previous work together, it's a perfectly fine and dreamy synth-driven song. Overall, I would have to say it is an underwhelming record, especially given the fact that it is proven that Miley can do so much better. It just feels so uncharacteristically safe across all fronts. Listening to this record, I realized that my initial comparison with Malibu and Flowers wasn't so far off. Narratively, I feel like Flowers was a sequel to Malibu. Flowers, however, is more honest and direct, and I think that same comparison can be drawn between Younger Now and Endless Summer Vacation. While Endless isn't as country-driven or conservative in themes as Younger Now, The same lyrical and musical safeness is reflected in it. The album feels like a regression. Plastic Hearts remains her finest album, but even prior to Plastic Hearts, when Miley took big creative risks with an album like Miley and Her Dead Pets, or the huge image shift and mix of styles on Bangers, even if it was met with polarizing reception, there was something admirable about those risks. Even if an album like Dead Pets, for example, didn't land well with general listeners, it's still an interesting listen given all the creative chances put on the line, even if every idea didn't form or mesh well. Given Miley's persona and fearlessness of diving into new sounds and styles, I think the worst thing Miley can be in her art is tamed, and Endless Summer Vacation is beyond tame.